Hi everyone, welcome back to Rachel's Studio. I am Rachel Parker Varner and I am always on a journey to get looser and looser. And I've had a few really interesting insights lately that I want to share with you. And one of them was how to paint loose on crack. And I don't know if that's a politically correct way to put it, but wow. One of the insights that I recently had really helped me to loosen up so much. And actually, I owe it to Janet Rogers. I was watching her video about painting a flower and it looked like a hot mess. And then as the flower painting developed and she added smaller little, just a few well-placed details, it all came together like magic, but it looked like a hot mess until she put in those little details. So I tried that approach to painting and also a few other things that I'm going to share. In fact, I'm going to share 5 tips on how to paint looser and what has helped me, but also this new insight that I had that really helped push my loose journey in watercolor forward even faster on warp speed. So I'm going to give you 5 tips how to do that. I'm going to show you what I've been working on too, and we'll flip through my sketchbook. This is one of the tips. So helpful. But anyway, first though, a few little pieces of business. I do have a free Facebook group that you can join and post your own paintings, which I would love for you to do. You can also join my Patreon for free and keep in closer touch with what I'm working on. And I share free tips on there all the time as well. I will share more at the end of this video, more about my paid offerings on Patreon. So be sure to stay to the end if you're interested in painting loose yet realistic, dreamy animals. That's kind of my forte. In fact, I just finished my project painting a wood dick. Oh, a wood dick. Oh, that's inappropriate. Sorry, that just came out. Yeah. Okay, wood duck tutorial. Wood duck tutorial, not wood dick. We don't want to paint a wood dick. I mean, that would be funny, but anyway, that's for another day. Maybe a day where a lot more wine is involved. Maybe at night. And I'm almost ready to upload my very beginner-friendly approach to painting a wood duck. So I'm really excited to share that. But let me show you a little bit of the journey I've been on. So I watched that Janet Rogers video and I noticed that she made a hot mess and then she pulled it all together. So I was like, I'm going to try that. So this is a new to me. I love this paper, by the way. It's Canson XL. I do have links in my description, and you can also get a very robust list of links to all the supplies I love on rachelstudio.com/supply list. So that has a lot of links to my favorite watercolor supplies. But I've never really had a sketchbook, but I've been using it to try out ideas. Like I did this mouse tutorial, a really loose tutorial. In fact, recently I didn't put a background in, but I wanted to see what it would look like with a background. So you can test out ideas in a sketchbook. I love that. And this is just not finished. It's the beginning of a crow idea. I'm just playing with crow ideas, loose European city ideas. These are just how to play with really glowing colors and washes ideas. So a sketchbook is a place to have ideas. I see these viral videos of people showing their sketchbooks and they're full of perfection, gorgeous work, which I'm not mad. It's fun to see them. Like, check out Brenda. Is it Brenda Swenson? Her sketchbooks are gorgeous, but the real heart and soul of a sketchbook is to try out ideas, do studies. And I truly do that. And in fact, here is the painting that I'm going to show to you. We'll look at this start to finish and I'll give you some more tips on how I painted this super loose. But this is the painting that I did. I was inspired to make a hot mess and then pull it together after watching Janet Rogers' tutorial. So that is where this painting came from. And this will be this is already up on my Patreon, in fact, as a paid tutorial. So be sure to check that out. Super loose. Just experiment. You don't even want to know. This is a wood duck that I painted, and I love this painting. And it came out so well that it inspired me to make a very beginner-friendly version of a wood duck. And that is what that is. That is also coming soon to my paid Patreon tiers. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. My friend Barbie told me about this very beginner-friendly approach to painting that she used. And when she started using this beginner-friendly approach to painting, she started winning awards. And be sure to check out, by the way, a guest tutorial I had with Barbie. She's my good friend and she's amazing. But so I used that technique that is new to me. I've never used that painting technique in this tutorial for beginners. And I will probably make an abridged version to explain this new technique on my channel coming up soon, so be sure to stay tuned for that. And then this is my second try, and the idea behind this is a Charles Reed idea that I learned, which is to make things recede like the tushy should be receding into the background, make it grayer and lighter and softer edged. So I did a second version because I wanted to play with that idea of making the tushy softer edged, grayer, and lighter. And then I did another study. So anyway, that's my sketchbook. And that's actually tip number 1 to painting looser. And that is to get a sketchbook. This is the thing, when you paint on expensive paper, you feel like you have to be perfect. So it's not so much about the cheap paper, it's about getting rid of that feeling of this painting has to be perfect and beautiful. You're not going to be able to paint loose if you're uptight and trying to get it perfect and beautiful. You've got to let go of your perfection. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to work with cheaper supplies so you don't feel like you're wasting them and you feel like you have to put all this pressure on these expensive supplies to come out beautiful, because they are expensive. A lot of good watercolor supplies are expensive. So getting a sketchbook, and I highly recommend this Canson one. I really liked it. Getting a sketchbook like that and kind of taking the pressure off of yourself and of your process and your painting, so you can get into a playful, experimental, and more carefree mindset. That is the number 1 tip, I think, that will help you paint looser. The aha moment that I had was watching Janet Rogers, though, paint this flower, and it looked like a hot mess. It went into an extreme ugly state. And I'll link that, by the way, in the comments. I have a whole binge list that you really shouldn't miss of all my most viral videos, the ones that you guys liked and have given me the feedback you've gotten the most out of, and also things that I just think you'll love. So they're all chock full of aha moments that I've had. So check those out in the description and in the comments. But this video gave me the insight that you can make a mess and then put a few well-placed details, and the painting will pull together 9 times out of 10. Not always, but make a huge mess and then put in a few well-placed details and it'll come together, like this cat painting. So let's take a look at the footage, and I'm going to do a sped up version, start to finish, of this cat tutorial. That is, if you want to watch it in real time with full voiceover, you get a line drawing, the reference photo. Thank you to Helen Bennett, by the way, for the reference for that. And thank you to Inga M for Inga M is on my Patreon, and she has gorgeous wildlife pictures, and this wood duck was from her reference. So thank you, Inga M, for that reference. But let's watch this sped up footage of this cat unfolding, and I will tell you the other tips that I have as we watch this painting unfold. Here we go. All right, my first tip is going to be start with larger shapes. How do you do that? Well, notice that both for the wood duck and for this cat, I zoomed in on them. I didn't include their full body. I zoomed in to make it just about the head and the neck. So when you zoom in on subjects, if that subject has a lot of small pieces, parts, then when you zoom in, it makes everything larger. Also, with this painting, notice I'm painting large areas with this cobalt blue and just letting it run. And I got the whole paper wet with the thought in mind to let go. If you get a lot of your water wet, you can either brush water on, don't leave puddles though, or you can splat a bunch of water everywhere all over your paper before you put paint on. Those are two different ways to force yourself to lose control, because when watercolor paint hits wet paper, it blooms out everywhere, out of control, and you have absolutely no control over it. So notice how even when everything's completely wet, I blobbed in the eye color, I blobbed in more eye color, and just let it bloom out like crazy. And this is the thing. As the watercolor develops, you can fix things. You can rein things in as you see fit. But the more soft edges that you have and the more blooms you have, the looser your painting's going to look. So here you see I'm putting in the orange ear color. I'm letting it completely bloom outside of the lines. So that is my tip number 2 is let the water and the paint play. Let them bloom out beyond the lines. Let them lose control in this first layer and just see what they do. And here you see me using a thirsty brush. A thirsty brush is just where you dip your brush in the water to clean it out. Then you wring it out, and then you can mush it on anything that you really hate that bloom. If you really think that bloom, like I didn't want my orange to bloom into the green eyes because that would dull down the green eyes. So watercolor is so fixable, and there's so many fixing techniques, and one is that thirsty brush method. So you can let things bloom out of control, see what they do. Now, I want you to look at my painting now. There's paint on pretty much all of the surface wherever the painting is. It really looks ugly, okay? It looks so ugly, just like in Janet Rogers' video. And I made a point to myself to let that exact process that I saw Janet Rogers do with a flower, I made a point in this painting to have a very ugly stage where everything is just a big blobby mess. There's just colors here, colors there, it's all blobbing out. I am using a more limited palette though. If you use too many colors, your colors won't hang together. So I didn't do that, but I am letting everything just blob out. And now this is what I start doing. I like to paint wet and wet like this, and I'm opportunistic. So as the painting dries and it goes from glistening where all the water's sitting on top of the surface because you just wet it, to the buckling stage where the water starts absorbing into your paper, and that's why we call this the buckling stage. You can actually do another set of techniques in the buckling stage that you couldn't do in the glistening stage or when the paper is completely dry. You can go in with thicker paint, like cream consistency paint, and paint these harder edge details, but the details will still stay soft. They'll bloom out a tiny bit, but they'll hold their shape. And this is the key to reining back in a blobby, ugly mess of a painting, is you start putting in some key details. With cats, it's so easy to figure out what those details are going to be. It's going to be the darks in the nostrils. It's going to be the pupils. It's going to be the eyeliner. And you can see where the paper stayed dry, which I like to leave a few places dry to add sparkle and hard edges. You can see there's hard lines like in the part of the eyeliner, but look at how this painting starts to pull together when I put in a few key smaller details that stay soft, because for the most part, my paper is still damp. So that's another key to painting loose, is let everything go crazy. And then as the painting develops, as you gain experience as an artist, you will realize you haven't lost control, because there are so many techniques that you can use to pull your painting back together. As I put in the details of this cat, the cat's starting to pull back together, but the soft blooms are still there, making it very aesthetically pleasing, those soft edges. And tip number 4 is to leave some areas unfinished. Like I left the bottom right quadrant largely unfinished. So you don't have to finish all parts of the painting. And in fact, it will make it more aesthetically pleasing if you don't put in every single little hair and every single little whisker. And when you make lines, especially if you've got long edges,
This happened in the wood duck. The top of the wood duck's head starts at the bill and goes all the way around to the back of the neck in the reference, and it's this long, hard edge of dark duck with light background, and it just looks so static. So that's one of the things that you want to avoid. You want to break up edges, and you can do that with lost and found edges. Another little sub tip that I find to be true is if you have too many darks in your painting, they start to look heavy and clunky. And this cat had some pretty dark stripes. And so what you'll see me do towards the end of this painting is break those stripes up. I painted them really heavy, clunky, super black, dark. And towards the end, you're going to see me break some of that up. So as your painting unfolds and you used non-staining paints for the most part, and you use paper that allows lifting, which this cheap student grade paper is miraculous because I was able to lift so beautifully. I loved this paper for that fact because I could use a very delicate, soft brush, like an acrylic painting brush, not a watercolor brush, and break up some of the harsh edges that inevitably leak into a painting as it unfolds. So you'll see that in a minute. And this is the final tip that I want to impart to you. And I learned this from an awesome video that I watched. What's his name? The title of the YouTube tutorial was a watercolor techniques toolbox. And I'll put the name of the guy that made that video, but he had a really great tip on that will help you stay loose as well. And his tip was to paint the symbol of things, not every single little thing. And he was referring to trees and landscape components of landscapes. And he was saying that if you try to look at your reference and try to paint every branch and leaf in your reference, it's going to get so tight. And that's true with cats, humans, anything. If you try to paint every single hair or every single brick in a house or every single branch and leaf in a tree, you are going to get really tight and it's going to start looking stiff. So here, see how I'm painting the stripes on his back leg? And I just made really quick arches with very fast, bold brush marks. I painted the symbol of his stripes. I didn't paint every single little hair the way they're, if you look at the reference, especially on his hind end that I want to recede. I don't want to paint every single detail. So I painted the symbol of those stripes on that back leg, kind of in an abstract way, very loose and very interpretive. You can think of it in terms of interpretive or the symbol of things. So whenever you can paint the symbol of things, that will really help you loosen up too, because then you'll just paint in the bare minimum information to tell people, hey, this is a stripe. Hey, this is an eye or whiskers or ears, but you don't tell the whole story. You just tell the symbol of the thing. And that can apply whether you're painting flowers or cat ears or stripes on a cat's hind end or a tree. All right, I do want to mention this is a bonus tip because we've gotten to 5 tips and I jam-pack my videos full of little sub-tips, little secrets and tips, almost like an Easter egg hunt that you can find no matter what part of my video you watch, whether you watch the end where I'm telling you about my paid options or the very beginning, I sprinkle little tips throughout. And so here's my little sub-tip for you when you're painting loose. And say you get tight. See, I got a little tight and heavy and clunky with the black stripes on this cat. So what do? I whip out what is called an Eradicator. This is a version of a scrubber. I made a whole video on scrubbers. And what are scrubbers? They are stiffer brushes than watercolor brushes. You can get stiff scrubbers. You can get soft scrubbers. Eradicators are softer. So you want to use softer scrubbers on more delicate paper like student grade paper like what I'm painting here. Here I go. with a larger Eradicator. There's two sizes of Eradicator, so you let your paint completely dry. You use the correct paper, which is a liftable paper. Not all papers lift well. You use non-staining paints. You let your paint dry. You get your Eradicator wet, and here I'm breaking up my stripes. So they got a little clunky and heavy, the opposite of loose. And the friend of looseness is soft edges, blurred edges, and blended edges, gradients also. So if you get too clunky or heavy of edges and you need to break up some of your long, hard edges, you can go in with an Eradicator like this or a stiff scrubber on Arch Cold Press, or Bow Hung will take stiff scrubbers, and you break those lines up. Think in terms of breaking them up. Just like when you paint whiskers, you shouldn't paint all the whiskers equal to each other in these long arcs that are like whisker gate and they're each evenly placed. No, don't do that. You want to, when you paint whiskers, for example, you want to put them in clumps of 3. And some are longer and some are shorter and some are straighter and some are more curved and some are broken. The line is broken as if the light is dancing across them. So you add variety. And that's a rule that you can apply whether you're painting whiskers or trees, a tree line in the distance. You don't want it all made up of trees, the same shape and the same color. You want to break up shapes. You want to break up lines. Think in terms of breaking things up when you're trying to appear to be loose, at least. You want to break things up. Also, you want to paint in larger formats. A bonus tip can be to hold your brush at the very end so you lose a little control. If you want a paper that really forces you to lose control, try Yupo paper. Paint as large as you can, because when you paint in a larger format, you can really swish those colors around and get really loose and let colors play on the paper. A really good example of this is my fawn tutorial that I did a couple years back that's super loose. I got super splashy and watery and just let everything kind of run together and just get crazy. And then I put a few well-placed details like the eyes to really pull it together. And it was just such a fun tutorial that a lot of my Patreon students really said they enjoyed. Okay, this is another thing that I've been doing recently, is painting larger with bigger brushes. So when you paint with bigger brushes, you can't do these little tiny little details and get really tight. And so the larger brushes that you use, the easier it will be to just paint in big swishy brush strokes and cover a lot of area and make larger shapes. And remember, for painting, a lot of beginners might think, oh, I want to paint loose and really colorful. I'm going to put red and green and purple and yellow and another version of yellow and another version of purple and this hot electric blue and this other cool green blue and all these colors, and that's going to make it look loose and amazing. It's going to be the color that carries my painting, and how can it go wrong with all these gorgeous colors? And then you do that and it just looks like a loud, crazy, huge mess. This is another key concept, especially for beginners. I don't think they realize. And I've heard this quote so much lately, and it's values. What are values? The lights, the mediums, and the darks. Values do all the hard work, and color steals the glory. So think more in terms of having a few strong areas of high contrast in your painting and making sure that you put those in to really pull your painting together. So the high contrast has to do with values, super lights against super darks, and have a few well-placed areas of those that will pull your painting together, and then use color later as the icing on the cake. Color can be thought of as the icing on the cake, and you don't want too many glaring colors. That's not typically going to look good. The more limited palette, you choose 3 or 4 colors and then mix all your colors from those, and your painting will hang together. And then you can have those high areas of high contrast to hold everything together. And the rest of it can be loosey-goosey, wishy-washy, fast and crazy. But when you have some bold contrast, some super small little details in the area of interest, high contrast in the area of interest, and a few bold pops of color, of really good color in the area of interest, that will make your loosey-goosey, crazy painting hold together well. So
those are a few key ideas that might help you move your journey a lot faster towards looseness. And I hope that really helped. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about my paid offerings. So if you would like to learn to paint loose, realistic animals, loose yet realistic animals, you may enjoy my Patreon. Now, I will say, even if you don't want to paint animals, just like I design all my tutorials, I give you all the tips that you need to learn to paint anything, like the tips about the high contrast and really prioritizing value over color and hard edges versus soft edges and how to get loose, soft melting edges. And that's actually another tip of loose painting. Try to get half soft or disappearing edges and half hard edges. That's just Charles Reed tip. And I have a whole video about how to help to do that using values to create your lost edges and found edges. And that's all in my Rembrandt windmill principle video. I will link that in the comments. It's one of my favorite aha moments I've ever had. But anyway, so if you join my Patreon, you will learn the skills that you need to paint anything, flowers, portraits, animals, because I give you the underlying principles that you need to paint a successful painting, including, and I think this is what makes my tutorials special, is I leave in my mistakes, because watercolor is just a series of fixing mistakes, y'all. That's just watercolor. Problem solving and fixing mistakes. So I give you those skills. And the only way I can give you those skills is to show you that meandering path, sometimes the fixes that you have to do in almost every watercolor painting. So I give you those skills and those techniques that you need to make your painting a success. So I think that's what kind of sets my tutorials apart. But if you want to join, I do recommend the $13 tier. Those are the more highly edited tutorials. I put more work in them. They're like on the level of a course, where normally you would pay hundreds of dollars for this tutorial. You only pay a low $13 a month to get access to not just one, but a whole library of tutorials. And you get instant access to all of that when you join at the $13 tier. You can also join at the $9 tier level. You don't get access to as many tutorials, but you can get a taste of the rest of my tutorials in the $9 tier level. And I highly recommend that you join for a year, and that way you pay for 10 months and you get 2 months free. So you get a total of 12 months for the cost of 10 months when you join for a year. So I do encourage that. Be sure to come join my free Facebook group and join my Patreon for free to start getting a taste for what I offer. And you can check out these other videos that are very binge-worthy in the comments. And be sure to subscribe to learn not just the how, but the why of watercolor, so you move along your painting journey a lot faster. And I'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.